Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to show you how to construct a frequency table of grouped data, starting with a list of raw data. Let's do it. Okay, so here you can see a list of names with some data next to them, and these are actually the total marks that you guys obtained for the workshop in the first term. Okay, you can see a lot of zeros there, and that's because a lot of you hadn't turned in the workshop when I took the data. So there's a lot of zeros in there, but there's also a lot of numbers, and these are your results. Of course, I changed the names to protect your privacy, but these are the results from your workshop. Okay, so there's 81, I have 81 total data points. And what we're going to do is construct a frequency table with 8 intervals, with 8 classes. Now, usually you get to choose how many intervals you want, but in this case, and for most of the term, I'm going to tell you how many number of classes that you guys need to do. Okay. So now the first thing that you guys might remember from the previous class, from the previous session, is that we have to calculate the class width, so the size of each interval. In order to do that, we have a formula, which is to find the range and divide it by the number of classes that I want. So in this case, I have a maximum of 22 marks and a minimum of 0. And we know that the range is going to be the difference. So I have the calculations already on the spreadsheet, and you can look at the formulas if you want. And I'm going to show you on the calculator, but obviously some of these calculations can be done by hand, no problem. So let's take a look at the calculation. The range would be 22 minus 0, divided by the number of classes that I want. In this case, I'm going to do 8 classes. So we have 2.75. And if you remember from the previous classes, we have to take the next integer. So the next integer in this case is 3. So the class width is going to be 3. So now we can start constructing our frequency table. And the first column that we're going to construct is the class intervals. Okay, so now we're always going to start the first interval at the minimum. So we're going to start at 0. Okay, and because the class width is 3, then the interval is going to start from 0 and go to 3. Okay, now the way that we're going to write the intervals in our frequency tables is by using variables as well. So in this case, this is the score, the number of marks. So I'm going to use the letter S. But remember that the letter that you use doesn't matter. You can choose whatever letter you want, or if the problem is telling you to use a specific variable, then use that. Alright, so S is going to go from 0 to 3, and it's going to be, the numbers that go here have to be greater than 0 or equal to 0, so it can include the zeros, and they have to be less than 3, strictly less than 3. Okay, so this interval is going to start at 0, including 0, and it's going to go up to 3 without including 3. And all of our intervals are going to be very similar. They're going to include the left boundary, but they are not going to include the right boundary, the upper boundary. Okay, so we're going to include the lower one and not the upper one. The second interval would be starting at 3, and it would go up to 6. Again, because the class width is 3. Okay, so my interval is going to start at 3, including 3, but not including the 6. So like that. Alright, now I'm going to do the rest of them quickly. So there's 8 classes, so I'm going to go through it a little bit quick. Okay, so we have our 8 intervals here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and all of my data points are going to go in exactly one of these intervals. Okay, so all of them need to go in one of the intervals, and if you remember from last class, there is no data point that should go in 2 different intervals. That should be impossible. Okay, so now the next column that we're going to do is the class mark or the midpoint. Okay, so when I say class mark or when I say midpoint, those mean exactly the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to put class mark, which is going to be the midpoint of the class interval. So to find the midpoint, what we're going to do is add up the 2 boundaries and divide by 2. Okay, add up the 2 boundaries and divide by 2. So let's look at the first one, how it would look. So for the first 2 boundaries, I have 0 plus 3. And then when I divide the answer by 2, I get 1.5. So my first class mark is 1.5. Okay, and again, these are some calculations that you should be able to do by hand. So if I do the second interval, I'll do this one by hand. 3 added to 6 and then divided by 2. So 3 plus 6 is 9. And when I divide 9 by 2, 2 goes into 9 4 times. 4 times 2 is 8. We get a difference of 1. Add a decimal point and a 0. Decimal point in our quotient. Bring down the 0. And 2 goes into 10 5 times. So the second class mark is going to be 4.5. Okay, so I'm going to erase the calculation. Remember though that when you're doing your notebook, sometimes, or not sometimes, you should always keep your calculations so that you know exactly how you got the answers. Okay, it's very convenient to remember sometimes how we got some of the answers that we're looking at when we're going to study. So now I'm going to complete the table for the rest of the intervals, all right? Okay, there we have it. Now, what's very interesting about the class mark is that after you figure out the first class mark, if you notice, all the numbers are going up by 3, which is the class width. Okay? And that's always going to be true. You only have to really figure out the first class mark and then just add the class width to get the next one. All right. So that's how we figure out the class mark. Now here's the most interesting part that we're going to study for this video. We're going to look at frequency. So our next column is going to be the frequency column. Now to find the frequency, what we have to do is look at which numbers from the list are in each interval. So we're going to start, for example, with the first interval. Okay, so the first interval starts at 0 and it goes up to 3 without including the 3. All right, so I'm going to go down the list. And this is what you guys need to do in your notebook. I'm going to go down the list and color, highlight with a different color, all of the numbers that go into this interval. Okay, so that start at 0, okay, that are greater than or equal to 0 and less than 3. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. So, okay, remember, starting at 0 and less than 3. Okay, all right, so here we have one. I'm going to color it yellow. All right, here we have another one. So I'm going to color it yellow. And you would do this process by hand in your notebook, okay? You would have to like print out the list and you can color it. you can color it. Or even if you want to learn to use the spreadsheet, you can do it. You can make a copy of this document and you can do it the way I'm doing it right now, okay? So let's keep going down the list. Here's another one. Okay, so that's the last one. So now we have to count all of these yellow colors in order to figure out how many data points are in this interval. Okay, so we have 1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, 19, 20, 21, 22.
22 of you didn't turn in the work on time. That's way too many. All right, so our frequency for our first interval is going to be 20. All right, let's look at another interval. Let's look at the interval from, I don't know, from 12 to 15. Okay, so you would do the same process for all the intervals. You have to do the same process for all of them, but I want to look at this one. I'm going to look at the process from the interval from 12 to 15. Okay, so the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth interval. So remember, they have to be less than 15. So if a number here is 15, it wouldn't go in this interval, it would go on the next one. Okay, they have to be less than 15, but they have to be greater than or equal to 12. Okay, so if there's a 12 here, it's going to go in this interval. And if there's a 15, it's not going to go here, it's going to go in the next one. Alright, so let's do that now. Okay, so let's use a different color. Let's use this light blue color. Okay, so this one is going to go in my interval, greater than or equal to 12 and less than 15.
This one is also going to be there. The 14, yes. Okay, let's see. Here we have another 14 and another 14. So we're going to color all the ones that go in this interval. Okay, in this light blue color.
Look at this one. This one is 15. It goes from 12 to 15 without including 15. So this 15 doesn't go in that interval. You have to be careful with that, okay? It's going to go in the next interval.
So here we have 14. We have 13 that goes in the interval. 12, because it starts from 12, including the 12. Okay, not the 15 again, not this 15. Alright, the 13 here is going to count. 14. Greater than 12 and less than 15. Greater than or equal to 12 and less than 15. Okay, what else?
Okay, that's it. So now we have to go back and count the blue ones. Alright, so let's count them.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
11. Okay, so we have 11. 11. We have 11 numbers that are in this interval. Okay, which goes from 12 to 15. And again, we have to do the same thing for all of the intervals. Okay, so you have to use a different color for each class. All right, so I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to just show you the end result. Okay, so here I finished coloring all of the possible intervals. All right. So they have a different color according to where they should go. All right, so, and this is the completed frequency table. So we have the first interval from 0 to 3, including 0, not including 3, is 22. We have the second interval from 3 to 6. Nobody got any marks between 3 and 6, or between 6 and 9, okay? So there's nothing here. Now for the fourth interval from 9 to 12, starting at 9, including the 9, and going up to 12 without including 12, it's 5. Okay, so I colored those in red. So if we look at the list of numbers, so here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so there's 5. that go in that class interval. We had already done the 12 to 15. Now from 15 to 8, it's 10. So I colored those. Let's see, I colored them in green. So this 17, this 16, they're all part of here. Okay, and if we go down the list, we're going to count 10 of them. From 18 to 21 is 25. So most of you were here. Okay, 18 to 21. So those are the purple color ones. Okay, there's 25. And last, from 21 to 24, I had 7 of you in this class. 7. And those are actually colored in white. So it's the last class. So they're the last one that was remaining, and we can color it in white. All right. So the idea is for you guys to have a list that you printed out, and you can color them by hand using different colors. Or if you want to do it in a spreadsheet, then you need to make a copy of this file into your own Google Drive, and then you can color it the way that I showed you. Now, of course, if you know a little bit of, if you know how to do some things in the spreadsheet, the spreadsheet can actually find the colors automatically. So, for example, if you see all of these rules that I used, help me color the cells according to the number that's in them. Okay, so I'm not going to teach you how to use that, but there are ways. Like the spreadsheet is very powerful, and you can do a lot of stuff with it. Okay, so the final frequency table for now is going to look like this. All right, I actually have a version that I did on the spreadsheet itself in the second page. So we have the lower limit, the upper limit, the class mark, and the frequency. And if you notice up here, you'll see all the formulas that I used, because that's how powerful the spreadsheet is. You don't have to do everything by hand. If you know how to do a spreadsheet, then the spreadsheet does a lot of the work for you. Okay, so here's all the work done using formulas, but of course you have to know how to use the formulas. All right, so that is how to make a frequency table. Until next time, bye guys.